Good morning, folks. Today is May the 30th, 2024. It's about 9 o'clock in the morning in Tampa, Florida. It's a nice, clear day. It's kind of sunny out there. It's going to be hot. Today, we are going to talk about a theory of mine, which I don't know if it's valid or not, but it certainly seems that it should be. If somebody commits a crime and they have a co-conspirator in said crime, and we can prove there's a co-conspirator in said crime, does that co-conspirator get to have a vote as to whether or not there's a prosecution or any kind of punishment meted out to the person who he committed the crime with? Is that allowed? Because apparently it is in the United Nations Security Council. We're going to talk about that. And I think I have all the proof in the world to prove not only is the Biden administration, Genocide Joe, complicit in what's happening in Gaza via their support, endless support of military aid and any kind of fucking veto authority they have in the United Nations Security Council and General Assembly. But they are also collaborators from the beginning. We sent military advisors over to Israel, supposedly, as they tell you, to ensure that Israel and help Israel figure out ways not to fucking harm the civilians. But we know now, from what has come out, what has come forward, in terms of Bibi Netanyahu bragging to his people at the fucking Likud party gatherings that it was his idea that the Nakba fucking Pier be built in the first place. But we have proof now, from the very beginning, certainly from that point on, that this was the fucking agenda. The agenda was to move people out forcibly of Gaza, and to reoccupy it. And I'm going to show you that in 1 second. That being the case, if the United States is not only complicit in supplying arms and materials that are being used to kill children, burn them to death in nylon tents, which, by the way, those were U.S. fucking weapons that did that. But they have been, from the beginning, collaborators in the planning of all of this. Which again, people seem to think, I did an article the other day, yesterday, talked about Vichy fucking Washington. And I have said, people say, Scott, Israel owns Washington. Israel runs Washington. We're just Israel's puppet. Not really. Israel is a client state of ours, of our fucking oligarchs, billionaires, and big businessmen. And the guy who runs Oracle, what's his fucking name? What's his name? Not Larry Summers, but all of those fucking people. And the neocons, and BlackRock folks, and State Street folks, and all of those people. They are colluding together. They're all part and parcel of the same fucking program. They have and Whitney Webb talks about that. United Kingdom, United States, Israel, all with their the intelligence fucking agencies all working together to bravely chart a new path for westernized world, which involves central bank digital currencies, which will be traceable, trackable, and programmable. That's a thing that people, don't seem to realize about central bank digital currencies. It's not just they're going to track your fucking money. They're going to track your money and then dictate how you can spend it. Your fucking money. It's not enough for them to tell you, for them to know where you're spending it. They want to tell you where you can spend it, not just know where you spend it. And Whitney Webb's all over that and been all over that for several months now, maybe a year now, probably longer. But anyway, we're in cahoots with what's happening with Gaza, and we have been from the beginning. And to answer one of the questions people keep asking themselves, how come AIPAC has this much fucking pull? You know, it's not just AIPAC, first of all, but how come AIPAC has this much fucking pull? These Zionists have this much fucking pull over our fucking Congress. Maybe that's the wrong question. Maybe the right question is, whose idea was this in the first place? Let's take a look at what I got. You can decide for yourself. Let's start off with this. We're going to get to this. We're going to get to my articles in a second, but I want to talk about this first. This is from the African News Network. I'm not going to play it. It's a Palestinian representative who was asked, I think, by South Africa to come speak before the United Nations Security Council. And he gave, for 17 minutes, he gave a fucking masterclass in laying out a heartfelt request to all the civilized fucking nations in the world and the people sitting in that room to please help them send a message to stop the carnage and the useless and pointless slaughter of civilians in Gaza. It is, if you follow this, if you've been following this, if you've been on the right side of humanity in for the last 8 months, I strongly recommend you go watch it. Either go watch it on my thing, or you can click on the African News Network and go watch it, the link there, and go watch it on YouTube. And give them the view, and give them a thumbs up, and give them a whatever you give them. I strongly recommend it. Of course, people everyone in the fucking room in the hall for this UN Security Council were clearly moved by his speech, and he's not overly fucking weepy and all that dumb bullshit. He's just sincere. He's just sincere, and his argument he lays out is perfectly on point. And of course, he's sitting next to the delegate from South Africa who's request before the ICJ to bring suit against Israel to force them to stop fucking the genocide. And that was a masterclass as well. Very well written, very well researched, just like this individual's speech he gave yesterday evening before the UN Security Council's emergency session on what happened in Rafah this past Sunday. Everybody in there was clearly fucking moved and listening, with the exception of two people. The representative from Israel and the representative from the United States. This is the basis of this video. This is the core of my argument. Israel certainly is not allowed to veto anything that happens in the UN Security Council in terms of resolutions, because they are the ones who are being questioned. They're the ones who are the target of the resolution. They're the ones who are under investigation for committing genocide. But by the same token, I posit this. The United States should have no goddamn right to veto anything coming out of the UN or the UN Security Council or the ICC or the ICJ for that matter, because the United States is just as fucking guilty, if not more. In October, mid to late October, this is dated October 24th, they went there before them. This is from the Times of Israel. The United States sent senior army officers to Israel to advise IDF on Gaza ground operation plans. This is also the same time, after this, they started building what they call Highway 749, otherwise known as the Nakba Highway, cutting all the way across fucking Gaza to the fucking water in a very interesting location. And I'm going to get to that in 1 second. By the way, later it was stated by Benjamin Netanyahu before the Likud Party special fucking session, special meeting. He claims that he sat down with fucking Biden and they came up with this plan to put the fucking Nakba Pier out there to quote unquote facilitate bringing aid into Gaza. The military, a military person on May the 22nd made news, made headlines, when he said no fucking, didn't use the word fucking, he said no aid that has come off the fucking boats in the week and a half or week that it's been operating, whatever it was, has yet made it to any Palestinians. Several hours later, there was a correction. Oh, they've just tossing aid out to these people who like, they don't need I've got so much aid now, we don't need any more. That was the new fucking statement. Oh, it's all gone to the Palestinians. The truth is often the first thing you hear. The correction is usually the fucking propaganda and the Hasbara. The truth from the military was, as of May 22nd, nothing had been made available to the Palestinians. In fact, we brought it in. We put the boats on the fucking big ships. The ships picked up the fucking things and put them on these little fucking lorries, basically, which ran these boats, ran them to the fucking Nakba Pier, and then the fucking trucks came off the Nakba Pier, and then they disappeared down the Nakba Highway. My guess is Israel took those fucking trucks and took them right across fucking Palestine, took them right across fucking Israel, and took them right into the fucking West Bank and gave them to their goddamn rabid fucking racist, hate-filled, bully fucking Zionists. That's my guess. Prove me wrong. Try to. I doubt you'll be able to. The Nakba Pier was, I've said this before, I called it the Nakba Pier before. I hadn't heard anybody use that phrase, or that term, coin. I don't know if, I want to say I coined it, but I did in my fucking mind because I'd never heard anybody say it. So, in my mind I did. Was I the first? I don't know. Who gives a shit? But the reality is this. The Nakba Pier was never, ever, ever about facilitating bringing in aid to the Palestinians. If they wanted to do that, the Biden administration and the U.S. military would simply go down to fucking Rafah crossing, bring about 500 fucking troops, go through the fucking crossing, get the goddamn Zionist fucking IDF assholes out the fucking way, and go like this to the lines of trucks. That's it. End of story. Egypt is our fucking client state as well. They're not going to say a word about it. Plus, it would look really bad for the leader of a Muslim country like Egypt in the Muslim world to take up arms against the United States when all they're trying to do is facilitate aid to get through the blockade from fucking IDF and the crazed settlers to the people in fucking Gaza who are surviving a fucking genocide. So al-Sisi would never do that. You know who would make sure al-Sisi never did that? Mohammed bin Salman. So, but we didn't do that. Instead, we made the Nakba Pier, which, by the way, Joe Biden mentioned in his State of the Union address. They'd already had plans for it. Plans, I believe, dating back to when this guy, Lieutenant General James F. Flynn, from formerly United States Marine Corps' Special Operations Command. You know, the guys who run fucking psychological warfare and irregular warfare and unconventional warfare operations in other countries. The guys who run, you know, people like ISIS and al-Nusra and Al-Qaeda. Yeah, that dude. That dude. Yeah. He was the main one who went down in October to go chat with IDF. Okay? Now remember, they started building the fucking Nakba Super Highway, Highway 749, which, by the way, goes by a different name. We'll talk about that in a second. But they started building that right after the communication with this guy. So what exactly was he talking to with them? Remember, this guy has special training and experience dealing with unruly people living in their fucking countries that the forces that be, the powers that be, want to get rid of. Like, say, Syrians east of the Euphrates. When, ISIS came through there and drove them out and chased them out, only to be then chased out by the glorious Kurds and the SDF, which, by the way, is 60% Takfiri terrorists from Saudi Arabia and other places. He was involved in all that shit, too. Okay? He's the guy they sent down there. Not some humanitarian, but a guy who specialized in dealing with shit like that. So that's a little background for you on that. Okay? And you can go look at this. It's from Times of Israel. You can put up with the goddamn ads. They got plenty of ads. So here's my question. Why the fuck, if we helped plan this, which gives you another insight into, well, gee, Scott, why won't they fucking stop? Why are they so, afraid of AIPAC? Why are they so afraid of the fucking Israel lobby? Can't anyone beat the Israel lobby? Some dickhead YouTuber down in Texas who stands up for fucking Palestine came within 700 votes of some special election with some fucking yeehaw, go America, and America loves Israel jackass. 700 votes. AIPAC is proud that they influenced it. We gave them all kinds of money. A foreign power gave this guy all kinds of money. You would be shot in the head if you were caught taking money from another country to influence legislation in China, Russia, Iran, probably the United Kingdom, but we'll see. Maybe in Canada, but Trudeau is a bad example of that, so maybe not in Canada. But certainly in all the places we call terror states, like Venezuela, Nicaragua, all these places, you would be tried. China, they probably shoot you. Afghanistan, they probably shoot you. Russia, they probably shoot you. Used to be in this country. They had a fucking punishment for treason. You know what it was? They'd shoot you. So AIPAC is proud. But keep in mind, all the fucking money, he won by 700 votes. Against a YouTuber. This guy's a professional fucking politician, and he won by 700 votes over a YouTuber. A guy who runs his mouth in front of a camera. A dumbass like me. Okay? So that's not really a huge victory, just so you know. So the question is, why is everyone so fucking afraid, and why is everyone doing Israel's bidding? My question, better question is this. Is it really Israel's bidding? We know it wasn't Netanyahu's plan. He took credit for it. It wasn't Netanyahu's plan. Is it the plan of that lieutenant general? Was this all his plan? Because it's starting to look like it was. Let's get back. Talk about, this is the article I wrote yesterday. Talking about Biden's Vichy White House defers to genocidal Zionists to investigate their ongoing genocide. And there you go. That's the new map of Eretz Israel. Vichy, Washington. Surrounded by Shmuley Land, New Zion, Beebyville, Trader Crossing, Covent Park, Simpton, and Bengiverton. I was pissed. I had watched, like anybody, like many other people, watched that fucking press conference where what's his fucking face just sat there and lied and wiggled and twisted and squirmed and told a whole bunch of bullshit. 1,200 innocent Israelis slaughtered, mutilated, and raped and tortured on October the 7th. That's a lie. The total number of Israelis who have been killed so far in the last body count from the IDF and the Social Security system in fucking Israel puts the total number killed since October the 3rd, since October the 7th, at 1,130. Total 1,130. 600 of them, over 600 of them, are Israeli soldiers. Most of them killed after October the 8th. During the conflict, which means that's a total fucking lie. The whole number, 1,200 innocent Israelis. First of all, they weren't raped. First of all, they weren't tortured. Second of all, any mutilated bodies were caused by the tanks firing shells into the fucking kibbutz, were caused by the Apache attack helicopters, gunships, with their fucking cannons unloading on all kinds of people running across during the rave. They've all said that themselves. This is all coming from IDF fucking soldiers talking about this shit, and from places like Times of Israel and Haaretz. And of course, the IDF saying themselves, we can't conduct an investigation right now into exactly how many were killed, because that would cause a crisis of morale in the country. Oh, indeed it would. Indeed it would. But our fucking spokesperson lied through his fucking teeth. What do you do when you're trying to cover up your own goddamn plans and keep them going? You lie. The IDF lies. So too does Washington. Make you wonder where the plan came from, maybe? A little bit? Kinda? John Kirby. That's a piece of shit's name. Here, let me show you a picture I made of this. There you go. You don't have to be a Jew to be a Zionist, and I'm a Zionist. That same man, motherfucker, right there, that same dude who had the nerve to say that, who had the nerve to say that what the pictures you see here do not cross his red line, that same fucking dude we'll talk about that in a sec. Yeah, so he's a Zionist. He himself claims to be a Zionist. It's a Zionist plan. We know that. So where did it came from? Where did it come from? This is the article I wrote today, this morning. And yes, I am writing more. I used to a lot until WordPress erased 11 years of my work. A lot of my articles and things that I wrote, some of the best stuff that I ever wrote were gone, not lost, but not fucking, I didn't have them on backup. Some of the stuff I had on backup, but a lot of it was gone. So I've just kind of, I'm shell-shocked a bit. I don't really care about the fucking videos. Writing is very personal. You think, well, Scott, people see you. It's personal. Not like writing. There's a difference, and I can't really explain it, so there you go. But I am writing more, so there you go. Here's today's article. God wiped Biden's Nakba Pier off the damn map before Israel could rebuild Netzarim settlements. They say, Scott, what is a Netzarim? What are you talking about? Netzarim settlements. Let me see if I can... it's on the other goddamn computer. See, I knew I would want number one. The Netzarim settlements. I can just do it this way, I suppose. so confusing. I'm so confused. This is a Netzarim settlement. It was established in 1972, and it was the last settlement in Gaza to be evacuated. They didn't evacuate them, they forced them out. The IDF forced them out. August 22nd, 2005. And in this sense, its eviction marked the end of the Israeli presence in the Gaza Strip since 1967. It was the last fucking one forced out. The last one forced out. Do you have any idea what the significance of that is? The location of the Netzarim settlements is right along that corridor here. This is the Netzarim corridor. This is where the fucking Highway 742 goes, right along here. The Netzarim settlements are right here, or were right there. Okay? Here's a better look. These are the Netzarim settlements. This is where the Netzarim fucking corridor is. And there's something very, very interesting about these I'm going to share with you now. Let me show you this. So who exactly are God's chosen people now? Is God to be declared an anti-Semite? After only being in operation for a week and a half, God sent a North African storm over to Gaza to erase it from its coastline. He or she knew that, according to reports, none of the aid brought into Gaza via the pier had made it to the Palestinians anyway, probably ending up being given to the IDF by the IDF to the rabid, racist, zealot settlers over in the West Bank instead. Yet, the Nakba Pier, actually designed to facilitate the forced removal of Palestinians from Gaza, since our puppet in Egypt said it would look bad for him to let them force all Palestinians into the desert concentration camps in the Sinai, was washed away after a mysterious squall appeared out of nowhere. Reports are that the boats they were using to ferry aid and other things from transport ships to the Nakba Pier became dislodged from their moorings and drifted off without anyone on board, some ending up beached in Gaza and others drifted all the way to Israel. This is the before and after. This here is what's called the NGO jetty. It was made by NGOs to get some fucking stuff in. It's really all they needed for aid, but this is not about aid. This big facility here, this thing floating out here, the Nakba Pier, is not about aid. We'll talk about that. As you can see here, it's missing. Missing. It busted up and floated away. And so then they had to drag it over to Israel and fix it. Supposedly going to come back in 2 weeks or so. Okay? The Nakba Pier is built at the end of the Nakba Highway, which was started at the beginning of the current conflict. After our military guys, went down there and quote-unquote advised them. It's located near what's called the Netzarim Beach. That's a quote, should be in quotation marks, where the highway ends, which implies someone has big plans for a new resort location to be eventually connected to the highway to glorious Israel. Here's some quotes for you from the AP and from Jewish Press. The Netzarim Corridor, or Route 749, is an east-west passage through Gaza, built by the Israeli Defense Force to permit them access for military purposes. Quote, IDF soldiers posted in the Gaza Strip on Monday documented the American pier near Netzarim Beach sinking into the water. Near Netzarim Beach sinking into the water. The soldier who shot the video was overheard saying, "This is what happens when you help the enemy." Yeah, these are our allies, boys and girls. Perhaps most telling, the corridor is named for the site of the former Israeli settlement that it includes. Yep, they named the corridor after an illegal settlement that had been there in the past, implying they might be planning to steal the land and rebuild the settlement. Netzarim Beach, not what Palestinians call that beach, by the way, tells you all you need to know about their plans. Also note the historical significance of the name. Netzarim was an Israeli settlement in the Gush Katif block of settlements in Gaza. Established in 1972, it was the last settlement in Gaza to be evacuated August 22nd, 2005. And in this sense, its eviction marked the end of the Israeli presence in Gaza Strip since 1967. So what do? They decide to build a fucking highway, 749, that cuts all the way across Gaza. And they're going to call it the Netzarim fucking corridor. In honor of the last time they had a fucking settlement in Gaza. Remember, this was fucking designed between the IDF and our fucking military, CENTCOM and SOCOM. Our fucking special operations people came up with this plan. It was never about taking fucking food into Palestine. It was never about taking aid into Palestine. The plan is to get people out of Palestine, which, by the way, fucking Trump's son-in-law was talking about, Jared Kushner was talking about a couple weeks ago, maybe a month and a half ago. So they should convince the people to leave and then rebuild it. And we can build up these nice big fucking casino hotels on the fucking beachfront property and make tons of money. Where do you think he was talking about? He was talking about Netzarim Beach. Let me show you its location. I've said before in the past that, and I've had to theorize in the past, that they built the fucking Nakba Pier right at the end of this Highway 749. Today I have incontrovertible proof. The pier was always going to be used to facilitate a forced mass exodus of Palestinians from their homeland, which is why it was built at the end of that road of the IDF made cutting across the whole of Gaza. After that, the Israelis could then use the highway to facilitate faster transportation of materials to build the new gambling resorts at Netzarim Beach, and, once completed, they could use the highway for tourists to bring the U.S. dollars straight into glorious Israel for day trips where they could visit the Holocaust museums and learn how the Israelis are the perpetual victims. I can see them creating their own little amusement park. You can go to Netzarim Beach and you can hang out and you can gamble, and then when you want something else to do, you hop on the fucking tour bus and you zip all across fucking Palestine and you look this way and you look that way and go, wow, look at this and wow, look at that. All the way into Israel, where they have a new fucking theme park, Victim Land. And everyone has to fucking, you got to go through a fucking training process for an hour where they tell you all the shit that the people, the bad Muslims have done to the glorious Israelis. Before you can go out, you and your kids can go out and play in Victim Land. Let me show you what I'm talking about. This is the location of where Netzarim Settlement was. It was removed in 2005. I want to tell you, there is a park that they built. A park that they built on that location. There's families and shit. Were before we blew them up. I mean, are we using the IDF as our proxy army? Is that what's happening? Joe Biden said you don't have to be fucking Jewish to be a fucking Zionist. There's a park there. Oh, there was a park there. We blew it up. They blew it up. The IDF bulldozed it. And the idea was, take something that was as ugly as a fucking illegal settlement, where they treated people and Palestinians like fucking shit because they looked down on them. They thought they were less than human, certainly less than them. And they built a fucking park for kids to play and to dream and to think about things. There's a water park right over here. This is a water park, Sham Park. A week into this, the IDF bombed the water park. A week after October the 7th. Because they had to clear out this corridor named after the last fucking settlement to be forcibly dragged from the land they stole, kicking and screaming, with their little fucking hair things sticking out from their hats, being carried out by IDF soldiers. I watched that shit live when it happened. So used to the IDF soldiers always backing them up. These settlers are like a whole bunch of fucking Cyraxes. Little, weak, skinny, milquetoast armed people who are just desperate, delusional, and they want to just take as much as they can, because all they think about is themselves. That's why they're settlers, because they've got nothing else in the lives that they had before, and this is their last desperate attempt to get a piece of land, to get a home they can call their own, because they were all fucking losers before they became settlers. That's a fact. Many of them were losers in countries outside of Israel, and certainly outside of Palestine. These are facts. Watching them whiny little pieces of shit be dragged out in 2005, I watched it live. And I laughed at them. Now they want it back. That's why they put that goddamn fucking highway there. That's going to be the first settlement they rebuild. To stick it to the Palestinians and the rest of the... How dare... We told you we'd get it back. We're going to get it back. We're going to steal that land back. From day fucking one. It has never been about defense. It has always been about offense. When you go to steal somebody else's land, watch a fucking football game. The whole point is you take more fucking land than you give up. That's called offense. It has never been about defense. It has always been about that. That yellow area up there is called Netzarim Beach. The Palestinians don't call it that. But the Israelis do. And the soldiers do. Because they know when this is over and said and done with, this is that fucking location. See that? You see that? That's the location of where Netzarim fucking settlements were. This is absolute fucking proof. Absolute, without a doubt, fucking proof. We are collaborators in this plan. No one ever sent fucking special forces guys, special operations guys, not special forces, special operations guys, anywhere to defuse anything to help the fucking civilians and the indigenous people. You send people like him over to get rid of the indigenous people. That's what we've always done. There is no fucking doubt, looking at this, what the location of the Nakba Pier was. You see this? This is the fucking Nakba Pier. You see this triangular shape? That's this triangular shape. This is the same location as this. This is the exact location of the Netzarim corridor, or Route 749. It was built at the end of the fucking corridor. It was built to facilitate the removal of the Palestinians and, I believe, to bring in materials, workers, whatever it took to build this fucking developer's dream of a fucking whole fucking beachfront of gambling casinos and resort hotels for Israeli businessmen and Israeli developers and people like Ivana Trump's husband. And hell, maybe even Trump himself. He is a developer after all. You think he wouldn't want a Trump Tower there? And if he helps bringing it to fruition, you're damn sure he's going to ask for one. There's no question. This is where the fucking pier was. This is where the pier was. This is the fucking NGO jetty. This is the NGO jetty. That is exactly where they put it. They put it there to help them fucking build on somebody else's fucking land. To steal the land. That has been the plan from day one. Israel has, from the beginning, planned to steal Palestinian land and settle it once again. The Highway 749 is named after the last settlement in Gaza, named Netzarim. They refer to the area around the highway as the Netzarim Corridor, and it leads to what the IDF soldiers are now calling the Netzarim Beach. Biden's Nakba Pier is located less than half a mile north of the Netzarim Beach. That's not fucking, there's no doubt about that. You can't find it on Google. Google blocks that. You can't find, they say the fucking images of Gaza come from 2024. No, they don't. Not on Google. Because Google's in bed with them. No question. Yet the forced depopulation of a people is still a major war crime and generally frowned upon by the general public, at least the ones that aren't raving fucking racists. So, too, is forced starvation and the destruction of civic infrastructure. It's all being done in order to make life unbearable in Gaza so they can present to the people the option of staying and dying of starvation or firebombing, or head up north to the Nakba Pier and hop a ride to some nation that's looking for cheap migrant labor forces. Which, by the way, I covered last week. Some business leaders saying they're looking forward to getting their hands on those Palestinian workers. Bibi Netanyahu is on record saying he told Biden to do this a long time before sneaky Uncle Joe mentioned it in the State of the Union address this year. The broken war crime pier has been removed at U.S. taxpayers' expense and dragged up north to a port in fucking glorious Israel, where we will try to fix it and return it to its demonic service on behalf of covetous Zionists in Israel. However, folks seem to miss the obvious symbolism here. Seems like someone doesn't want his or her people forced out of Palestine just yet, which leads this writer to ponder just how many times they'll have to rebuild and remoor the hate bridge to genocide on the Nakba Highway before some genius in military intel figures out they might be fighting a losing battle, which leads to the obvious question, where's your God now, BB? However you look at it, happenstance or divine intervention, since no one else is doing anything, one cannot escape the obvious fact that since the beginning of this conflict, certain folks in Israel had every intention, and still do, to drive the Palestinian people off their land and take it for themselves. And apparently Joe Biden and the U.S. military down here at CENTCOM are all just fine with that plan. Ergo, Joe Biden and the U.S. are complicit in war crimes and therefore forfeit any future rights to a UN Security Council veto regarding Israel and Gaza. They are collaborators. And last I checked, a co-defendant isn't allowed to veto whether or not a prosecutor is going to bring fucking charges against his other co-defendant. Call me crazy, but maybe someone in the UN Security Council could mention that fact. Maybe somebody, yeah, the fucking Anthony Fauci emails to his buddy and saying we got to get rid of these fucking emails because a FOA fucking request is gonna embarrass us all about the origins of this thing. We know what the origins were. They built it. They made it in the Luger Center in fucking Tbilisi, Georgia. That's important. That's good to know. We should know that, especially considering they've got another one coming for us. That's important to know. However, I'd like to see some of these goddamn military emails. I'd like to see some of that lieutenant general's fucking emails back and forth with folks here in the United States and fucking the IDF and Bibi and the other fucking Lakudniks. I'd like to see him actually typing out, yeah, we got to keep from hurting the people because the people are innocent and we don't want to kill any children. I'd like to see him write that. I'd like to see where he fucking wrote that shit. Or, most likely, he wrote, well, you know, we can't get the shit down through, we can't get the animals down through fucking Egypt because that'll cause Sissy some problems. What we can do is, we can build a big-ass pier. And then we can use the pier to start bringing in stuff for your new fucking beachfront condos and high-rises and resort casinos. Most likely, that's what the goddamn communications are going to say. Most likely. Now, he's not down here in CENTCOM. He's at SOCOM, or was at SOCOM. He's probably working with some developers right now, trying to figure out exactly what the IDF needs to blow up next to clear land for those glorious fucking resorts and casinos. It's been quite obvious from the beginning that they've never had any intention of stopping. And the criminality is off the charts. My argument in this video is quite simple. The United States should have no right to veto any resolution having to do with genocide in Gaza or Israel regarding these actions, considering the fact that it is highly likely that the United States, the Biden administration, should be a co-defendant in these cases, as opposed to somebody sitting out the United Nations Security Council with a veto right over this. It's not just the fact that we keep giving them more fucking weapons to bomb and kill. It's not just the fact that we pretend we'll hold their feet to the fire and then do nothing and say nothing that would imply that we are opposed to what they're doing. Because let's face it, they wouldn't be doing it without us. And I tell you the truth, I'm starting to think they couldn't have come up with the plan without us. I mean, especially when you got Lieutenant General fucking special operations dude whose whole fucking career has been about going to other countries, getting disaffected people, turning them into fucking terrorists, and then destabilizing countries and killing fucking civilians. That's literally what that motherfucker did his whole fucking life. And that's the person Joe Biden sends down there to help look after civilian life? Bullshit. I call bullshit. Somebody should be hitting up the Freedom of Information Act requests on all his communications. All his communications. And since, of course, he's just acting in the humanitarian way in Israel, he shouldn't have any problem offering them up, should he? Anyway, it's clear. The Nakba Pier has always been about removing Palestinians forcibly from their homes so that Israel can build a fucking resort hotel, chain of resort hotels on that fucking beach. They've already changed the name of the fucking beach. That's where we put the pier there. So we can then start facilitating shipping in the steel and shipping in the concrete and shipping in the fucking workers and shipping in whatever we need to ship in right there. That'll save all kinds of time and money having to bring it into Ashdod and then bring it all the way down Israel and then bring it in across that fucking Nakba highway. Think about the fucking money that'll save. This has been the plan all along. And in my opinion, co-defendants have no fucking right to veto prosecutions of their co-defendants. Thank you for your time.